That's how I operate.
You know what? It's a good plan.
Still gets done.
You are buff, dude.
I'm getting there. Just I feel like it's like the older I get, the smarter my workouts are getting, but I'm working against Father Time.
Oh man, he's
you know
a
what I mean?
bitch. He's an asshole.
Yeah, it's like if I would have had this knowledge when I was in my 20s,
I actually I played lacrosse at Pepperdine.
Hard sport.
It's a great sport, and I never could keep muscle on. So I was like 155, and I was mean. Yeah. And so they're like, "Well, put in Baggett. We're out of players."
Yeah. 100. I wasn't 100 pounds till 9th grade.
Wow.
But luckily, I had the crooked teeth and the mullet going for me, so I was a threat to the ladies. I played soccer for 10 years. Had a tryout with like a semi-pro team when I was younger, so I was always the fast, wiry guy.
Wiry, because you can't get too muscular in soccer,
can't,
right?
You can't really, like I said. But it's funny how guys I would pick fights with on the field I would never consider.
Because there's a referee.
Right,
there.
right. As soon as my mom will tell on that type of thing. So.
Stare you down.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're a badass 7th grader.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's gonna be the name of my next comedy album, Badass 7th Grader. How are you doing the show?
How you doing? We just launched about a week ago.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, so we did a lot of interviews at Freedom Fest. We got a lot of weird, interesting, odd people. We have a studio in Texas and now in LA.
Right.
And I've just been so delighted at the level of comedians that have come on.
Yeah.
The smart people. We had politicians.
Good.
So it's all over the page. I guess it's more like Joe Rogan. At his level, he can interview anyone. It's interesting.
Right.
But I'm not any particular agenda politically. So I have found that just my comedy friends are always safe. Because they're so much fun.
Yeah.
And everything's always X-rated.
Yeah. And comedians might have a few things to say. You don't have to like pull answers from them, really.
I always think, and I always thought this because I remember before I started doing stand-up way back in 1990s, and I was in Texas. I didn't even know you can act. To me, it was a far dream.
Sure.
Where'd you grow up?
Northeast Ohio, Akron, Canton, Cleveland.
Yeah, so no one says you can be a celebrity. No one says that's even on the menu.
Right.
And so I remember seeing albums of like Robin Williams, and I was like those guys are the smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
I feel like those individuals were the poets of the 2000s, where in 1860 they actually wrote poetry.
Yeah, I understand.
And without maybe musicians write some poems once in a while, but I've always found that the comedians are the cutting edge of culture, and that's what I aspired to be. Like maybe I could be that wise.
Was that your Mount Rushmore? Robin Williams and who else was on yours?
George Carlin.
He was on my Mount Rushmore. Still is.
He's the only guy that I've ever had, I've ever met in person, and I had nothing to say.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it was in a Starbucks.
That would
in Santa
be me
Monica.
if I met Steve Martin. I would cry like
Steve Martin's one of those.
I would cry like those teenage girls who saw the Beatles the first time if I met Steve Martin.
I'm never at a loss for words, and I'm just sitting in Starbucks. And I'm like, hi.
Also, it wasn't at a show. You were just out.
No, it was just it's unexpected.
Now I'm even more jealous.
And no, but then he left, and I just was like, hi. It was like, that's it.
Yeah, you think in your head you have all this stuff to say, and then when the time comes,
And it's interesting because a few years later I lived in Hollywood, and I walked into this building, and his star was right there in front of my building, and I was like, I miss and he died.
Yeah.
And he died.
Yeah.
Why do people die?
I don't know. You know what's funny? You mentioned that. While I generally, of course, I feel sad if like a celebrity dies. I mean, death is sad, but when a comedian dies, it almost makes me angry in the sense that they've devoted their whole lives to making people laugh and happiness, and then they go and do something like die. Like it's almost like you just betrayed everything you're all about. I mean, I know it sounds juvenile, but every time a comedian dies, especially if it's one I respect or even know, it really affects me more than just a regular celebrity were to pass.
Well, the other thing about this particular art is every year they come out with something brilliant. And you're never going to get that anymore.
Yeah,
because there's such a catalog of work that is still so good.
Right.
Bob Saget passed away a couple years ago.
First guy I ever paid my own money to see as a comedian when I was 18.
But everyone in Hollywood loved him. All the comics loved him. People don't know about Bob Saget. He's like the dirtiest comic among comedians, and he had the Full House.
Yeah.
And he was so great.
And America's Funniest Home Videos too,
which is also G-rated.
Sure. Well, it's funny is like I said. So I saw Bill Cosby. That's a whole other podcast episode right there. When I was 7, and again when I was 9. But I saw Bob Saget. I paid my own money, took a date in high school, right? Tiny little comedy club in Canton called the Akron Canton Comedy Club, 100-seater. Sat in the front row. I mean, I know I talk fast. Saget, I mean, he's machine gun.
Right.
And I liked him so much, I took my parents the very next night. Coincidentally, we got the same exact seats. Flash forward years later, I win the Detroit Comedy Festival. In addition to the prize money, I get to do a half hour before Saget in front of like 3,000 people, right? So I tell Bob Saget that story. He remembered the shoes I was wearing because he made fun of my shoes because it was the late 80s. I had these stupid shoes with like a rope. A sole was made out of rope or something. So he goes, I remember that. You had those really weird shoes. I'm like, how do you remember that? And then what was funny is I was only supposed to do 15. At the last minute, they said, can you do 30? I'm like, of course, I'll do as much time as you want. So Bob Saget comes into my dressing room and he says, listen, my crowd sometimes has a tendency to arrive drunk and or high. So he says, if you lose them and you can't hold the stage, I can make up your time. And I looked him in the eye and I said, I'll hold the stage. And I crushed it, right? Come on, 3,000 people. I mean, how many chances do you get?
I'm not leaving.
I'm not going to take a dive. So they didn't have an announcer bring him on. They let me bring him on.
Wow.
And I got to tell the story of how he was the first guy I ever paid to see. And I brought him on. He comes out with his guitar, gives me a hug, and he whispers in my ear, goes, thank you for making my job so much easier.
Oh, what a compliment.
And that was it. And then, like I said, he passed, 5 or 6 years later. I was pretty sad about that.
Yeah. Lou, we didn't introduce you.
Oh, that's okay.
Lou Santini. Now, you're a comedian.
26 years and counting.
That's a hell of a resume. And is that 26 years primarily like every week going out? 26 years?
Yeah, I mean, 24 of those years was in Los Angeles. I mean, you and I have that in common. So
that's amazing. Yeah, because a lot of comedians, including me, like, we've been doing it 20 years.
Yeah,
but there was 5 years where I didn't do it.
Yeah,
so
or they go up once every 5-6 months.
Yeah, and it hardly counts because you can tell. Well, we can tell
if
someone's seasoned or not within about 10 seconds.
Oh, of course.
And some people, there's so many open mics, which I think is great, by the way.
Yeah.
Currently, as we record this, there's 4 or 5 open mic places in LA.
Yeah.
There's always time to get your reps in, even in other parts. But back in the 2000s and 1990, there was not open
comedy
mics.
clubs, and that's it.
If you didn't have an in and booker, so that was my challenge in 2005, was trying to find stage time to get better and to find my voice. You did that 10 years earlier, right?
Yeah. I started, I said my bread and butter started in radio for 11 years in Northeast Ohio. That was full-time, 6 days a week. And while I wasn't doing, for lack of a better word, pure stand-up comedy, when you're in radio, you do a lot of personal appearances, a lot of heavy metal clubs, a lot of bars, a lot of lounges, a lot of ribbon cuttings, the new Burger King opened, whatever. And, you get a chance to, I really realized some things that were funny in person didn't necessarily translate to radio. Like I'd say something funny at a personal appearance, and I'm thinking, I got to use that because I get a laugh. Go do it on the radio. I'm like, that didn't work because you don't have that immediate feedback. You don't see the audience clap or laugh or whatever. And other times I'd say something funny on the radio. Someone would call in. That was hilarious. I'm thinking, I'm going to use that at a personal appearance. And then you do it live. You're like, oh, it only worked because it was on the radio. So I really learned that in terms of timing. So while I said funny things at personal appearances, once I got out of radio, I was able to fully concentrate on that. And I moved from Northeast Ohio, Cleveland to Los Angeles. So I started there in 97.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I don't know if you know, I wrote books on handwriting analysis when I was 22, 23 years old.
Wow.
And I started doing like Jay Thomas 106, my first big radio show.
Oh, sure.
Remember that guy?
Oh, absolutely.
From Cheers. He was a professional.
Yeah.
He actually taught me, he goes, here's what I do. I stand the entire 6 hours in the morning. I never sit down because your energy's better.
Right. I always stood when I was on the radio.
But that was a great tip. I was like 19 years old, right? So every interview I did from home with my headset, I would just pace around the room. And I would have this great energy. And then they got back. So I don't know if you know this, I did 1,500 interviews.
Oh, wow.
Promoting books and stuff. So I got really good on radio, which is what you did.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, this will translate easily to stand up. It did not.
No, I said I've interviewed over 300 rock stars, musicians, other celebrities, and thinking, this will be great. I could be in an interview. I've been interviewed a million times, working the road, but you're right. You would think, this will work. It doesn't. The one-on-one and asking someone questions is not the same as doing pure stand-up.
Yeah, and when you're on one-on-one on radio, or if you're hosting your own show, you have no feedback.
Sure.
So you just have to guess.
Yeah.
And what I realized that I was doing, which is the reason I went back to Howard Stern twice and all the big morning shows, is I had figured out what jokes kind of work regularly. And because if you're with a radio show like Bubba the Love Sponge, there's 6 or 7 people in the room, and they all laugh.
You can bounce things off.
Oh, and it's so easy. And you're like, okay, that worked there.
Sure.
So if I'm doing that in Ohio, I know this is going to work.
Yep.
And it did. I got back over and so that's what gave me this confidence of like, I've always been doing comedy since I was 19, but I didn't start stand up until I was 33.
You're doing handwriting analysis at what age?
19. Well, by the time I got my first radio show, I was 19.
Okay, I just picture you like forging your parents' signatures on like report cards and things like when you were a kid. Like, oh, I got this dialed in.
My father goes, listen, man, I'm really busy. I travel a lot. If you just sign my
Is
name,
that right?
This is like 5th grade. If you just sign my name that you went to the doctor, I will never have to bother because they'll just have that one signature.
Wow.
So I remember thinking, like, how did I sign it last time? So it was left, right, it was right. Like, it had to be obvious.
How do you even know you have that talent? I mean, how do you like, you know what I'm really good at? How do you know?
Well, I'm not a professional forger. Let's
no,
go
I
back on
understand.
the story.
You're not the guy from
At
Catch Me If You Can, that guy?
At 5th grade, I was a really good forger. I actually saw that guy speak. He's like FBI,
Yeah,
super interesting guy. No, I took classes at 14 and 15.
Wow.
My father took classes, and I became sort of the handwriting guy. So all my friends were like, oh, do that trick, you do handwriting. So I didn't know if it was authentic, it was bullshit, I wasn't sure. But as I got older, I realized, well, there's a little science behind this, and there's some people great at it, some people not great at it, and I began to get excellent at it. But what it did for me personally was made me popular. And I wasn't necessarily good looking. I was kind of funny, so I would do the handwriting, and all of a sudden, women would just show up and hang out with me.
Oh, so you were a comedian. You're not necessarily popular, weren't good looking, but the women liked you because you were funny.
You're saying that we use comedy to meet women?
Yeah, maybe that might be the case. Well, I mean, I talk about that in my act, but I want a guy who's funny. I want a sense of humor, and then they go on to have sex with the captain of the football team when you're in high school. You know, it's like, yeah,
you went over to the same high school.
Yeah, you know, we're the warm-up act for the guy who gets laid. You know,
they come hang out with us, they drink, and then they go to
we're the
his
comedy
house.
Fluffer for the guy who actually gets to close. That's exactly what that is. We don't get this. Hey, story of my life until once you got into radio, though, then it became, you know.
Well, I was a celebrity, and people that before the internet, they don't understand. Like you were either on radio, TV, or newspaper, and if you were in those, you were a celebrity.
Sure.
From like the '80s up until basically 2001, in 2000ish, when the internet became pretty popular.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, people had their own channels, which I actually like it now. The fact that we're doing the Bart show, the fact that I can produce this, that I can do the show I wanted to do. I spent years going into the networks pitching a show, and you know what, you're not really there. And okay, we like you, and Comedy Central's like, you know, you're not really there. So there's always gatekeepers.
Oh yeah, I know. Hollywood's job is to say no. I really feel like, because I'm currently pitching 2 game shows plus a movie script, right? And I feel like a lot of Hollywood is, like you said, the gatekeeper. Like, well, if I say yes to everything, then I'm not. Any chimp can just say yes. So I have to say no, even if I like the idea. And then eventually, when someone else nibbles at it, then the people that said no, oh wait, we'll bring that back. Maybe we want to see that again.
Yeah, the first show I pitched was probably 2003, and I'm sitting in the head office of ABC. And this wonderful woman, and her name escapes me at the moment, but she goes, look, I got to tell you, Bart, I said no to Survivor twice. And she goes, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm doing the best I can,
Wow.
but we just don't know what's going to be a hit.
That's honesty.
And whatever show you're pitching, like, I may say no to you, but I could be wrong. And I thought that was such an honest sort of assessment of like, look, I know I'm in charge of this network, and it's not really a fit for us now. And so I pitched a lot of shows that never did. And that's what I love about today is the audience is going to find you with no gatekeeper.
Yeah.
So this show may be terrible, but some people may love it, and it could blow up, but I don't have a gatekeeper.
Yeah, well, like I said, as a podcaster myself and as a comedian, what I like about comedy, if you're a control freak like I am, you're the writer, producer, editor, choreographer, performer, and when it goes well, hey, it's all me. When it goes bad, now that audience was terrible. You know what I mean? Yeah. But no, when it goes bad, I make a joke. You still can take that responsibility. I tell a lot of new comedians, the highest high from the best show you ever had and the lowest low from the worst show you ever had are not really representative of who you are. What you want to aim for is consistency. You know what I mean? So like if you book Bart on 10 shows, my scoring system, for lack of a better word, is 7 out of 10 times I'm going to kill. 2 out of 10 times, I'm going to have a solid set. And 1 out of 10, like any human, you're going to tank. I mean, you lived in LA. I mean, I watched Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld tank. They're trying out new stuff. I mean, It happens.
Yeah, it happens. I watched Russell Brand do it about 2 hours before his big special. This is like 10 years ago before he grew the Messiah complex thing.
Okay.
And I really liked his comedy, and most of it was open mic stuff. I don't know that he can go to open mics, but what he did was he goes, I got a big mailing list. I'll just mail it out. And he had 200 fans, very tolerant of him writing notes, talking to a computer. And he was doing hard stuff. Like, I like doing religious things. I like making fun of hard topics. I like taking on those challenges, but they're harder to write because you're basically offending people's core beliefs.
Someone's going to be
Well, it used to be 77. Now it's only 67% of America are Christians.
Okay.
So if you make any joke, like I have a Jesus of Nazareth sort of thing, CSI Nazareth, which I think is hilarious.
Already I can see where the bit's going, but yes.
Right, but if you really love Jesus, 67% are already on edge. Like, don't offend me.
Yeah.
So you've got to navigate it very carefully. He
hear
did it
that.
so well. And let me finish the story.
Yeah.
Is that of that hour and a half or 2 hours, only like 7 minutes ended up in the special.
Yeah.
And what it taught me was, oh, this is hard.
Yeah.
You're going to go through a lot of material that just isn't great. And then what's great ends up on the special.
Yeah. What comedian was it said is like, yeah, a diamond is made, you mine it from the earth. It's not ready for a ring coming out of the earth. You have to chip away as much as you can while still maintaining the integrity of the diamond for something you can sell, that you can use, that is pretty. And it said, you write 10 minutes of material so you can find, there's the 60 seconds. That is just,
That's
right
so
there.
frustrating. It's sort of like the David. The sculpture's
Yes.
there, but you got to keep taking it away.
Yeah, I think they took a little bit too off the wiener. I've seen that statue, but
I find him attractive.
Yeah.
You think he's a little unhung for you?
I just remember when going to Italy thinking, man, that statue's huge. Why does the penis seem so way out of proportion for the rest of the statue? I mean, all things being equal, right? His hands were huge, his head was
are the
huge.
size of like
Right, he's got this little
13-inch
nub. It's like a clitoris on there practically. So, but nonetheless, can we say clitoris? It's a medical term. Going back to what you said though,
You've cut up the staff
yeah.
now.
Going back to what you said about your
Keep
Jesus
laughing.
of Nazareth, you said people get edgy.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be talking about that when I do the panel about comedy and censorship. People, not all people, but a lot of people, as I call them in my book and my podcast, amateurs. They hear Jesus. Oh, what? It's like, what? Let me finish yet. Wait till you hear what the story's about first. I'm probably on your side, and even if I said something that offended you, okay, move on with your life. Does it change your beliefs? If it makes you question something, well, then chances are maybe it was something you didn't want to hear. Maybe you should be considering that. But I'm not. I mean, you said you like to tackle the tougher subjects.
Yeah.
I do that to a point. But my whole, I've had people, like, I didn't like that joke. I have a joke about my mom smacking me when I was a kid. Yeah, I'm an Italian, right?
Right.
I mean, I wasn't abused. I wasn't beaten. But I talk about in this one particular bit how, like, you ever get that once-in-a-lifetime beating? It's particularly from your mom, where she just loses her mind. You remember where you were, how old you were, what you did. You probably deserved it. And you can laugh about it now. 99% of the time, people are like, oh, that's my mom right there. I remember that. Instead of a book that she threw at you, it was a shoe or a hairbrush or whatever, and you laugh about it. And I had some woman come up to me and she goes, I was abused my whole life and that hurt my feelings. It's like, look, I feel bad about that, but you didn't listen to the bit. I even said at the beginning, and I don't do disclaimers in my act, but it's like, let me be clear. I wasn't beaten every day. My mom and I are very close. I've written a couple books about her, but I think people have a knee-jerk reaction to words now without listening to the building blocks of comedy: context, writing, timing, and the audience itself, the venue, the avenue in which you're watching it.
So I have a theory, and it's not a comic bit, but there's this people that are super allergic. Like I have a friend with 2 super allergic kids.
Yes.
Nuts, milk.
Yeah.
Like they can't even be in the house because they're allergic.
The boy in the bubble.
Yeah. And so I get, like, these kids came out of the womb allergic.
Right.
Seems like a lot of people feel like it's their right to be allergic to your words.
Yeah.
Therefore, instead of making a bubble, you should shut up.
Yeah, that's their identity. Their identity now is things that oppress them, victimhood, their anxiety. This is why I literally I gave up on dating women in Los Angeles. That should piss off all the women in Los Angeles now.
They're just disappointed.
But
they're
very
sad.
Maybe I'm the common denominator. But nonetheless, I mean, I dated all races, shapes, and sizes and ages when I lived in LA. Some successful, some not. Obviously, not all of them, because I'd still be dating them, and I moved out of LA. But I would eliminate some of these women right out of the gate, because on the first date, they'd be talking about their anxiety and their allergies and their problems and things they had a problem with. It's like, but this is our foundation now,
You're a victim, and we have to
You're a
change the world
victim,
around
and I
you.
have to handle you with kid gloves now. It's like, you're dating a comedian. You said you wanted someone funny. It's like comedians are very much get the joke out, deal with the forgiveness later. Yeah, right?
Well, you have to always have that talk, especially women who've never dated a comedian. Like, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to say shit.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to mean it.
Yeah.
And you may or may not be offended by it. And then you have to process this.
The best example I always give a lot of new comics is the old standard, a man's watching TV, here comes his wife or girlfriend. Honey, does my butt look big in these jeans? The civilian of course, is going to smooth things over. No, what? No, honey, you look perfect. You're
Yep.
beautiful. But a comedian's like, he's got 10 smart ass answers right out of the
And
gate.
all of them hurt her feelings.
All of them hurt her feelings, but he knows, like, she'll get over this. If I don't get this joke out, I won't sleep.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like, I have to, like, come on. She's tossing me this lob. If I don't spike it, I'm not going to, and then we'll deal with the consequences later, knowing that I love my girlfriend or wife. She loves me. She knows I don't mean anything by it. That's the difference between a comedian mindset and a civilian mindset. So, ladies, this is what you're up against. Or the men, if they were dating the women, too.
I use that in one of my jokes. I'm like, and then I said, honey, it's not the jeans that make you look fat.
Sure.
And the girl's like, boo.
I know.
And I want that because the setup is later. But
Right.
it's so funny because even though I'm obviously on stage, obviously saying this is an asshole thing I'm going to say, they still offended.
I know.
And it's not even them.
Yeah.
It's me with this other fictional person.
Yeah. Who you're not even dating anymore, right? Every male comedian, when they're talking about their wife or girlfriend, she always talks like this, so she's a nag. And
Right.
every female comedian, oh, their husband or boyfriend, they're so stupid, right? I mean, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's like, I can give as well as I can take, or vice versa. It's like, I'm okay with that. I've resigned myself to that part of my life as a comedian.
I don't mind the stereotypes. It's fun. Speaking of girlfriends you dated, you told me a funny story before we got on here. Apparently, you dated my girlfriend.
Yeah, but I didn't.
But apparently, the whole world thinks you dated my girlfriend.
The whole world.
Well, apparently, and Jerry Springer. So this is such a great story that I just is completely deleted. She's like, we haven't seen each other in a while, and it's like, didn't I go on a date with your girlfriend? I'm like,
Who? She said that?
You
I
said
said
that.
Oh, yeah. So before the show.
yes,
Yeah. So I was on a dating game show.
This is an ex-girlfriend a long time ago.
It's got to be well over 20 years.
Yeah.
Around there. It was hosted by Jerry Springer. And what's funny is I was a contestant on this dating show. I think the concept of the show was the female contestants would have to go through the three male contestants to determine. The show was called Baggage. That's what it was called.
It was called Baggage.
That's what it was.
And then you get 2 bags and they send you somewhere.
Yeah, so it's like, you tell one truth and 2 lies, and then the female contestant could determine out of the 3 men which is the most tolerable for their baggage.
Oh, well, Max Girlfriend could definitely tell a liar. That was a good skill. I've tested that. And I always lost.
So what's funny is, I mean, we didn't make it. What's funny, I remember being a contestant on that show, and it's hard to not be funny when you're dealing with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember from the booth, you could hear the director like, Lou, that was great, but you got to dial down the funny. And Jerry Springer looks at me and goes, yeah, come on, man, I'm the host. And I remember I told him, I said, well, step aside, Chief, and he laughed. And then your ex-girlfriend and I, we got paid to go on a date, which we never went on.
So in fairness, she's like, hey, I have this opportunity to go on this show.
Right.
We're dating. Well, should I do that? I'm like, you're living in Hollywood. You should totally do it.
Yeah, exposure.
Why not?
Easy money.
I don't know if he's single. No, but it matter. You don't have to go on the date. They'll send you money.
They gave us money, and we never actually went on the date. But then we started communicating via, I think, MySpace back then. I
or
think,
text
maybe.
message.
Yeah,
Or her burner phone.
Yeah.
Because that woman had a burner phone? What?
She had the first burner phone ever. Yeah. The prototype of burner phones. So then, we never got paid. It took like 12 months to get like less than $1,000. So I said, did you get paid yet? She goes, no, I'll let you know. But then we needed a woman on our softball team.
Okay.
And that's when I said, you want to be on our softball team? Which, there you go. Then all of a sudden we're in bed now. We take that giant leap from a game show to softball to intercourse. That's how the Los Angeles dating timeline works.
But it's weird. I've had so many people go on game shows. Now, have you met Jerry Springer before that show?
No. Fellow Ohioan too.
He passed away in the last couple of years, and I was on Good Morning Texas, and it was September 12th, 2001, the day after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
And whatever, like everyone's super serious,
Sure.
and whatever, and I've never met him before, and we're in the green room getting makeup on, and he was just delightful.
Tall guy too, right?
Wasn't
he taller
than
than you?
Funny. Like I just remember politician, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was joke
Right.
in the green room. And finally he turns to me and they're showing the buildings fall on 9/11, and he goes, I'm just going to say both buildings fell? But they got both of them? Really? As if he never watched the news. And he goes, you think it's too soon? It's too soon, isn't it? I was like, oh my God. He was, it's so tense because
Sure.
And he just cut it with a knife. And I was like, this guy's a genius.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. I had to do a show at the Ha Ha Comedy Club in North Hollywood
perform there.
the day after
You did not.
9/11.
Oh, no.
And I remember I'm just waiting for my phone to blow up like, hey, show's canceled or whatever. And they didn't. And honestly, doing comedy 26 years, it was one of the most memorable, touching shows of my life because we got there and, most comedy clubs, music's playing, keep the energy up. And you could just tell everyone felt like why are we doing this? But no one wanted to go home either.
Right. They didn't want to go home.
Maybe a dozen people in the audience on a Friday night when it was packed.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was actually hosting that show as opposed to doing a regular set. And the comedians were backstage pacing like tigers, like, everything I say is going to be offensive. I have no reason. I have no right to be here. How dare I be here?
How dare I be happy?
Be happy. You know what I mean?
We're supposed to be miserable.
So I remember I came out on stage and there was a guy who came to the show by himself. He had a military Vietnam hat on and maybe his shirt or jacket or something. And I came out there and I said, all right, folks, let's just get one thing straight here. The comedians backstage are nervous as hell to perform. And we know you're tense. So I can assure you there will be no jokes about the tragedy that befell us. But let's make a deal. We promise to make you forget about everything that happened yesterday for an hour and a half. And you promise just to forget about your troubles for a little bit. And we'll work on, I mean, everyone at the same time, you could tell went, okay. And I remember every comedian destroyed, and even the ones that were less experienced.
Yeah.
And we got the standing ovation. Look at this, goosebumps. Standing ovation. And that military guy stood up and was crying. Man, there was not a dry eye in the house. It was just a beautiful, beautiful night of comedy. And that's one of those life-affirming, like, this is why you do comedy right there.
Because you're releasing tension. You're taking people away from their troubles. That's the perfect example of the best scenario.
Yeah.
My brother, who has no respect for the arts or comedy, is like, well, you're the clown of the family.
Sure.
I was like, it is an art.
Yeah.
Do you know how many years, like Lou, like this is such an art, but there's no respect for it,
right?
Because you've never seen that moment of like,
right,
you're gonna take people and transport them away to somewhere else.
Do you have that type of moment working in your cubicle? Probably not. And I'm not saying other jobs aren't important as well, but I mean, seriously, it's like, it's like those are those life affirming moments. Like, I'm not going to say it makes up for the lousy money, but it's right there. I mean, it really does. I have that now the rest of my life.
Well, the thing about the money is you do it for 10 or 15 years and you barely make a living.
Mm-hmm.
You struggle.
Sure.
And then finally you hit something and now you're kind of on easy street. Was it like that for you? Was there a jump when you're like, wow, I'm making a living now?
Yeah. I was in radio 11 years and I was struggling for the first 5, 6, 7 out of 11 years in radio, keeping the lights on, but I was also working 80 hours a week.
Yeah.
I had a side business, DJing weddings and corporate functions. All my side hustles were always things that involved entertainment, writing, on camera, on stage, something like that. I wanted to keep, even if I had to have 3 or 4 jobs, keep them in the entertainment business.
That's smart.
And then all of a sudden, you get called up to the majors at the #1 radio station in Cleveland and one of the most prolific stations in the United States, WMMS. And here I am now. I'm covering the ribbon cutting of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was actually in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an exhibit for a while. And then all of a sudden you go from being ass deep in debt to like liquid like that. It's like
this is what it's like.
That's what it's like.
10 years of hard work.
Sure.
Now you're. I mean, you're not rich. You're just all of a sudden like
but you're making your living in entertainment. And when and
that feels good.
It feels good. And when you're in entertainment in Los Angeles, I mean, I painted storefronts on car dealerships and drugstores, and hustled like crazy, and I had an office job until, but all of a sudden, 2003, 4, it's like all entertainment.
That is impressive. Can I look at your handwriting?
Go ahead if you can read it.
It is messy, but it's actually it reminds me. I've done, like I said, almost 1,500-1,600 radio shows, and all the best radio hosts write like you.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So this fluid, see this kind of your Y's and G's kind of curve in there.
Uh-huh.
That is all fluidity of thinking. So you have L and Lou.
Can I get that in writing from my girlfriend? The fluidity in thinking.
Very
please?
fluid.
Okay, good.
Very fluid. What it means is you go from one topic to the next very smoothly. And what I'm thinking the only one that would have this perspective, because I've interviewed so many radio professionals, is they have the ability to weave words, say something, and come back 5 minutes later and finish that thought.
Yeah.
And that's a writer's ability, but some writers can't talk.
My girlfriend calls it rambling, but go ahead.
It's rambling. Yeah, it's rambling. But you're a rambler, and that's just, you're in the perfect position for yourself. I mean, you could still go back to radio for that.
Really?
Also persistence, which is a sign of self-made millionaires, which is great. Domineering, which can be a little bit petty if you want to take control.
Someone hit the ding on that.
Is there
ding. Nailed it. Domineering.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pride, which I think is always a wonderful quality because it means that you care about your work, and status is important. So you worked for a long time with no money, but you were getting status.
Right.
I did the same thing in my 20s, and I was broke most of it, but I was kind of famous. So I was like, I would like some money in addition to this notoriety.
I tell a lot of new comedians, when you're not making money, your reputation's all you have. So protect it.
Well, and it's important, but it's also a driver. So what I did in my 30s, I still want the recognition, but I also would like to have some business. I want some money.
Sure.
And so I sort of adjusted my values. It's still recognition's important, but making a difference, being creative, all that's there. No, you're a very well-balanced person. You really are a fast talker. You almost like New York fast talker.
I get that a lot. People think I'm from New York.
So the M's and N's are how fast you are, and generally what that means is people who drive slow in the fast lane, you'd like to shoot them.
Were you following me here, or I told my girlfriend I want a hood-mounted machine gun for my car.
But they do. Yeah. Have you been on a cruise ship ever?
Yes.
Why do they walk like this and you cannot get to your gig? You can't get to the buffet, and they'll go left, and then you'll go around them. And
walking to your show, this happened 3 times. The same woman twice. I even went around her at a different part, and then I'm like, she's back.
Can't you just shoot them?
I think that's still illegal.
I mean, I believe there's a gun vendor at the show. It would probably be okay.
As I talk about my act, that's so much as like a taser or like a silencer, just kind of like a Sopranos.
I mean, I think an elephant gun, but taser's probably better.
Yeah.
But don't you get like, because here's why: you think fast, you've already finished the thought, and they're still slow.
I get mad at my computer. I'm like, I hit the button, do it. It's like shift tab or open this file.
You have
now.
one job. You're a button. You have one job.
Oh my God, dude! I want to hug you right now. It's like I say those exact words. I tell my girlfriend I fully believe that inanimate objects are like public enemy number 1. It's like, you have one job, do it. Toast the toast, microwave the bagel, whatever it is you're doing.
Oh my God! So you gave me a T-shirt.
I did.
So first of all, you got my color. I don't always wear this. I have like 5 of these shirts because it makes my eyes look pretty.
I wanted to say something. Yes.
No, it's not gay. Just a beautiful.
You're a pretty man.
It's a pretty. So this is
no amateurs.
Yep. Ooh, I kind of like that. What's the meaning behind that?
Amateurs, my dry bar comedy special is called Amateur Nation.
Okay.
My book on Amazon is called Amateur Nation, The Decline of Common Sense, Manners, and Social Skills.
Nice.
And my podcast is called Amateur Nation. Amateurs are people who are doing life wrong.
Like
the speed bumps in your life, the people that are in your way every day. And, I talk about it in my intro, the unintelligent victim types. All these people, like, just enough of you.
All the people we make fun of.
The people we've been talking about on the show today. Exactly. People I make fun of in my act. So, yes. So, my shirts, you can get them on my website. I'm running out of them, but yeah, no amateurs.
So you have Lou Santini Entertainment on Facebook, YouTube, Lou Santini. It's so easy to go.
Yep.
And then you have this unfortunate...
Lou.Santini 3.
Lou. So there's a...
Well, because I've
two other Lou Santinis?
No, I got my account censored twice by Instagram. They shut it down. I have 10,000,
so you had to start
over.
over?
Started over. Twice.
So you can follow you. And is there a show coming out? Where can they see more of your comedy? Just LouSantini.com?
LouSantini.com. My dry bar special, drybarcomedy.com/LOUS. And I'll actually, my calendar's on there.
How fun. I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, this will be great. When this podcast drops, we'll promote it back and forth, and I'll hang out with you in LA, I hope.
Can't wait.
We can share some more girlfriends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I owe you one, girlfriend. So, though already I'm behind. So,
Lou Santini, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.